Well, hey, good morning, Transit. My name is Heath, and I get the honor and privilege to work for the high school ministry here at Brownsbridge Church Inside Out. And I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. Now, I have a quick question. How many of you guys wanted to see something smash in that video? Like, he was so close, right? Like, I wanted to see something smash. Like, it was right. He was right there. All right, so here's what I've done. I knew that you guys would say that. I knew you would want to see something smash. I want to see something smash. And so my really good friend Megan in the back says, hey, we have the video of when stuff got smashed. So she said, if the students want to see it, I'll give them a little clip of it. So here's what I want us to do. We're going to convince Megan to play the clip, all right? So I'm going to start chanting, play it, and I need you guys to help me convince her that you want to see it, okay? 1, 2, 3. Play it, play louder. Come on, play it, play it, play it. Go for it, Megan. Oh, the coffee pot just destroyed. Oh, man. That's a mess right there. Okay, all right. I think that's it. We'll save the rest for next week. I don't want to give you guys all the clues there, all right? So if you're lucky, maybe next week they'll play the rest for you. Hey, I'm so excited to be here today. We're kicking off a new series called Cracking Under Pressure. And I am so excited to talk with you guys about this because I feel like pressure is something that all of us have to deal with at some point in time in our lives. And you guys know pressure. Like there's pressure in our lives on a daily basis. And what I want you to understand and learn today is that some pressure is good pressure. It's healthy and it's just part of our everyday life. But some pressures are not so good and are more unhealthy, and we need to do our best to avoid them. And I started thinking about how we've experienced pressure, maybe some ways that you guys have experienced pressure in your lives. And I started thinking about when I was a kid and I would go to the public pool. And the public pool in my town, it had 2 diving boards. Maybe you guys have been to a place like this. It had 2 diving boards. It had the low diving board, which was like super springy, great for doing flips and tricks into the pool. And then it had the high dive. Right? And you would always tell when somebody was getting up to do the high dive because if it was their first time, they would climb up and then they would just kind of like slowly creep towards the edge. And what would begin to happen is it would kind of back up the line and everybody would notice like, oh man, somebody's stuck on the high dive. They want to do it. And our pool did this really cool thing is if somebody was up there and they were scared to like jump down, they would do this thing where the whole pool would, just like you guys started to do, would start chanting and encouraging them, like, hey, you can do it, jump off. And so everybody would start going, jump, 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 jump. And then all of a sudden the whole pool is going, jump, jump. And that person would, muster up the courage. And a lot of times, they would get to the edge and maybe they weren't, bold and brazen enough to like really jump off. But they would kind of get to the edge and they'd have like this moment of courage where they would just, and then down they would go, right? And I always thought it was incredible. They would do this little pencil dive into the pool and everybody would clap for them and go crazy when they came up out of the water. And you could see them like excited. And it was one of those moments where I saw, hey, pressure can be a good thing. Like we encourage this person to step up and do something brave and courageous that maybe they couldn't have done on their own. But then there was also times when the pool would be a little bit more rowdy and it would encourage people to make decisions that were not good and were not healthy. I can remember vividly this one time, this one kid got up there and he announced to everybody from the high dive that he's like, hey, I'm about to do a belly flop. And everybody was like, what? From the high dive. I don't know how high the high dive was, but like in my little kid mind, it was like hundreds of feet into the air. I was like, he's gonna die. But all of a sudden the pool just goes into what they know and they start going, belly flop, belly flop. And everybody starts chanting belly flop. And I was like, no, he's gonna die. And he gets up there, gets to the edge, and I was like, he's gonna chicken out. He's gonna do the pencil. Everybody knows it's way too tall. And the guy spreads his arms out like this. And he leans forward. Can you catch me? Are you gonna catch me? Okay. No, she's like, absolutely not. Do not jump. No, so he goes and he does the belly flop. And I mean, guys, it hits the water. And y'all know that sound, that belly flop sound? Oh yeah, you guys know. It's that slapping sound. And he comes out of the water and we're all like, do we cheer? Is he alive? I'm not really sure what the next moment is, but he came up and everyone's just like, bravo, sir, bravo. Like and his chest and belly's all red. It looked like he was sunburned. And I just remember thinking, I was like, sometimes pressure is not good for us because everyone totally pressured him into doing this belly flop that I know had to hurt for weeks on end. It looked so painful. In our lives, pressure can be a good thing. It can encourage us to do things that are courageous and brave. But pressure can be a bad thing, and it can actually make us do things that probably aren't such a good idea in our lives. And so today we're going to be talking about pressure and what kind of pressures we deal with. Are they good things? Are they bad things? And maybe some of you guys have felt pressure. Maybe that's not the way you would express it, but maybe it is. Maybe some of you walked in here today and you felt this. You're like, hey, I feel pressure. Today walking in here, like I feel pressure from home. I feel pressure at school. I feel pressure at church. Like you have pressures in your life that you're dealing with, and you would say, hey, yeah, I feel pressure. Maybe some of you feel pressure, but you don't really know what that looks like or what that means. And maybe you would say it like this, like, I don't know how to talk about it. Like there's something off, there's something wrong. I can't exactly put my finger on it, but I just don't feel good about myself and about what I'm dealing with in life, but I don't know how to talk about it. Or maybe you're even a step further and say, I don't know what's wrong. Something's off, something in me feels like it's not exactly right, and I just don't know what it is that's wrong. But I think a lot of times when we feel pressure, what we often feel, and what a lot of you guys may feel in this room, is that you feel this. You just feel stuck. Like, hey, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know if I can do it, and I'm kind of stuck in this in-between of fear and can I come through and do the things that I'm expected to do and the things that I want to do? Am I brave enough? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Who should I listen to? And we just feel stuck in this moment of indecision. And there's a guy who I think felt the same way that you guys do. So it's a great lesson that we're going to learn from Scripture today of a guy named Nehemiah. Can you guys say Nehemiah? Nehemiah. I'm sure that was a really cool name when his mom named him that, but it's a weird name for us today. And so Nehemiah is a guy in the Bible who felt a lot of pressure. You see, he was an Israelite living in a foreign land called Babylon. And the Babylonians had conquered Israel and destroyed Jerusalem. And Nehemiah, being an Israelite, wanted to rebuild the Israelite capital of Jerusalem. He said, hey, I really feel like God has given me a vision, and God wants me to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the city for God's sake. He wanted to rebuild the walls, make it a city again. But in doing so, he created a lot of pressure for himself. He felt a lot of pressure, actually. Nehemiah felt pressure from many different ways. First of all, he felt pressure to do a good job, right? He's going back and he's rebuilding these city walls, and these are city walls. Like nations are going to try to attack them, and they're going to come at Jerusalem moving forward. He's like, hey, I've got to do a good job to keep people safe in my home city. But he not only felt pressure to do a good job, he felt pressure from the king, because the king had sent him back to Jerusalem with money and resources and people, and was like, okay, you can rebuild the walls of your city, that's fine. Here you can even have some people and some stuff to go back and do that with, but just so you know, you're representing me when you go there. So now all of a sudden, he's not just trying to do a good job for his city, but he's trying to do a good job for the king, which brings a lot of pressure. He also felt pressured to rebuild God's city, that Jerusalem was where the temple was and where God lived. And he was like, hey, if we're going to rebuild the city, I want to do a good job so that God is proud of me and that God thinks that I did a good job. And lastly, he felt pressure from his enemies. There were people who didn't think he should be doing that. And there were some people that even accused him of trying to start a rebellion against the king. He said, hey, he's going to go back, he's going to rebuild the city, and then he's going to turn on the king. And so they began to spread rumors and talk nasty about Nehemiah. In fact, some of his enemies even formulated a plan to create a trap for him so that they could go back and tell the king that he's starting a rebellion. And so they planned this trap, and they're going to call him down from rebuilding the city walls, and they're going to trap him and make it look like he's planned this rebellion. And so they send a messenger to Nehemiah to set up a meeting so that they can trick him and catch him in this trap. This is what Nehemiah responds in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 3. He says, so I sent messengers to them with this reply. I am carrying on a great project, and I cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? He said, hey, I can't stop my project. I feel pressure from God. I feel pressure from the king. I feel pressure from myself. I feel pressure from my friends and family. And now I feel pressure from you guys to come down and stop doing this. He said, I feel pressure on all sides, but you know what? I'm going to keep doing the thing that God told me to do because God told me to do it, and that's what I'm made to and meant to do. He said, I don't have time for the pressure. I don't have time for this plan, this meeting. I can't come down. I have to keep doing what God told me to do. And I think in the story of Nehemiah, we can learn a lot about what God has for us in our lives. Because just like Nehemiah, God has a plan and a purpose for your life. He has a vision for you of what he wants you to do. And along the way, you're going to start feeling pressure from other people, maybe from within yourself, maybe from your parents, maybe from your friends, maybe from your enemies, maybe from people who are above you, coaches, teachers, parents. You're going to feel pressure to veer from that plan. And I think that we can learn from Nehemiah, there's good pressure and there's bad pressure. There's pressure to listen to and pay attention to and follow, and there's pressure to avoid. And in this story, we see Nehemiah avoiding some really bad pressure from his enemies in order to carry out what God had for him to do. So in doing that, I tried to think of if we're going to have different types of pressures. I have this visual aid that they're going to put on the screens for you guys to see. And so in this, these different types of pressures that Nehemiah felt, he felt internal pressures that were good and healthy. Right? You see that with the picture of the guy pushing the rock up the hill. He wants to do his best. He's like, hey, if God's going to task me to rebuild the city, I want to do the best I can do. I want to make these city walls fantastic. I want to do my best. You guys know how that is, right? Like when you take a test in school or you're on your sports team, like you don't go up to the plate looking to strike out, right? You want to hit a home run. You want to make an A. You don't hope to make a D and pass, right? Like you want to do an A on the test. You want to do your best. That's a good, healthy internal pressure. But there's also internal pressures that are unhealthy. You know when you make like a 98 on the test and you miss that one question, and that one question just gets stuck in your head all day long, and you're like, man, I'm so dumb. I should not have missed that question. What was I thinking? And you begin to beat yourself up, not because you made a 98, but because you missed the one. Sometimes our internal pressures can be really unhealthy when we don't have grace for ourselves when we make a mistake. God has grace for us. We have to have grace for ourselves at the same time. There's also external pressures, and your external pressures can be healthy. Think about like a coach or a teacher encouraging you to do your best, encouraging you to do the best you possibly can. Maybe even like your small group leaders are external healthy pressures, encouraging you to make wise decisions, encouraging you to choose to follow God with your life. External pressures from other people can be healthy and actually can help you live a better life. Also, external pressures can be unhealthy. If you've ever had to deal with a bully or some people who are tempting you to do the wrong thing, external pressures can also lead you to make bad decisions. It can lead you to feel worse about yourself. And if coming from the right people, they can actually make you make really, really bad decisions. You see, we all face decisions. We all face times in our life where we have to figure out what kind of pressure that we're dealing with. But here's the thing about pressure. Pressure clouds our vision, but faith keeps things in focus. Have you guys ever been to the eye doctor and they put that thing in front of your eyes, right, to help you see, and you have to read the letters on the back wall, and the eye doctor starts flipping through, and sometimes they're really fuzzy and cloudy and you can't really see, and then he flips a couple, better one or better number two, right? Like, and you're like, oh, two is way clearer. I think in our lives, pressure is like the lens that we see things through that makes things cloudy. When people begin to pressure you to do things that you know you're not supposed to do, or they pressure you to go somewhere you're not supposed to go, or they pressure you to feel a certain way about yourself that you know is outside of what God says about you, they can begin to cloud your vision of where your life is going and who you're supposed to be. But our faith keeps things in focus for us. It's like when the eye doctor flips it and everything becomes clear and you can see again. I have to wear contacts or glasses, and so a lot of times when they just put the thing on me and it's just like normal vision, I'm like, I can tell there's a wall, right? Like I can't see the wall or what's on it, but there's a wall. And then the guy starts flipping it and puts my prescription in, and then he's like, all right, how about now? And I'm like, oh, I can see everything perfectly fine now. I think faith a lot of times works that way for our lives. We don't always see the pressures around us, but we feel them. We don't always know the right decision to make, but God places people in our lives to help make those things a little bit clearer. And our faith helps keep our lives in focus when pressure tries to cloud it and make it a little fuzzier. In a minute, you guys are going to go into small group, and you're going to talk about the stresses and the pressures that you feel in your lives. We all have them. Some are good, some not so good. And what I want you to do is to talk with your small group about the pressures that you feel and try to figure out which ones are good, which ones are bad, and how you're dealing with them. And so as you go, I want you to think about this question right here. What is the greatest source of stress for you right now? What is the thing in your life that's bringing you the most pressure, the most stress in your life? Whether it's an internal thing, maybe it's an external person, maybe it's a problem that you don't know the answer with. I'd love for you guys to begin to think about that so when you go to small group, you have the opportunity to talk about it. But first, I'm going to pray for you guys. Bow your heads and pray with me. God, thank you so much for the guys and girls that are here at Transit this morning. Lord, I know that so many of them are dealing with pressures at home, pressures at school, pressures that are external, pressures that are internal. God, I pray that more than anything else, that they would see and hear today that you have a plan for their life, you have a purpose for their lives, and the pressures that they feel are normal. And God, I thank you for the friends they have in their small group and their amazing small group leaders who are going to help them navigate what pressures are good and help us to be the best version of ourselves, and what pressures are bad and lead us astray and further from you. So God, give us clarity, help us to have faith that keeps things in focus for us as we discuss the pressures that we deal with. And God, in the ways that some of the pressures that need to go away, Lord, give our students faith and courage to step away from those pressures. And all the pressures that need to stay, Lord, give us faith and courage to step into those with confidence because we have you on our side.